guys, I'm really excited to be here. That is unmerited, what he just did. I don't, half that's not true, actually. But no, I'm really excited to share with you guys today. I will, in light of being honest, this is my first time doing this. I've never preached before, so be ready for a bomb about to go off in here. This is gonna be bad. It's a bad kind of bomb. No, this is, guys, I feel pretty nervous, but I'm excited to share with you guys because hopefully the cool thing about every time we get to share anything about the Bible is that we know it's God speaking and not us, which is great. Like Greg said, Carol, you saw up here, she was playing guitar. That's my wife. We have been going to CFC for about 4 years now since we moved up here to work for Young Life. I'm the area director in Harford County. And actually, it's really funny. I've seen some people in the back who have come up to me since we've been here and go, I met the Lord through Young Life when I was a sophomore in high school. And now they're in church here. They're in 30s, 40s. It's just really exciting. So thank you for letting me be here. Okay, here I want to share this because of just the way God's wired me. There's something that I think I'm good at, and I think I'm pretty relationally good with people. And even with high schoolers, which is kind of weird. Actually, some friends here that are probably like, no, you're the old guy that's like in the crowd at the football game, and you're not good with high schoolers. But anyway, I feel like I am a little bit, and it's something that I've always prided myself in. It's my thing. You know, it's the thing that I've almost, in a sense, ordered my life around, so much so that now I work for Young Life. Like, I'm pretty good relationally. I'm meeting people. Like, I'm passionate about Jesus. And so that's kind of what I get to do. And so I've ordered my life around the thing that I think I'm good at, my thing. And honestly, I think all of us have something that we're good at, or something that we have been given by God that we start to order our lives around, something that we would say that we're good at. And so actually, I want you to take 30 seconds right now, or really just 10 seconds to think to yourself, what's the one thing that you would say I'm pretty good at in this life? Now that might be, just to give you an idea, that might be, hey, my job, like I'm an engineer and I'm pretty good at that. Like I've moved up pretty quick, I'm pretty great at that. It might be your relational ability. It might be you saying, hey, I'm actually a pretty good parent. Which parents are like, no, you can't be a good one. No, but maybe that's what you're thinking. Hey, I'm better than the other moms who show themselves on Instagram. Like, look at mine. Or maybe it's, hey, I'm a pretty good cook. Or I keep my house in order. I do all the Christian things. I want you guys to think for 10 seconds, maybe just what's your thing? And then in a moment of just, I think the reality of being with other people that come on a Sunday and want to be encouraged by Christ, I would love for you guys just to turn to someone next to you and share what that thing is. So you can do that right now. Take maybe 5 seconds. What's the thing that you would say you're good at? And it doesn't have to be super deep, but what's the thing you'd say you're good at? And then just turn to someone next to you. And if you don't know their name, say, hello, I am Kevin. Don't say Kevin, say that's my name, but just turn to him and say, hey, here's the thing I'm good at. Okay, do it right now. Take 30 seconds. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, here we go. Thank you for that music in the background. That wasn't planned, so they just had that ready. That's the thing that's funny about that. Is someone's on an iPod back there like, now it's time. That's really funny. But, okay, hopefully you got to meet someone new and you got to share what's the thing you're good at. And here's the thing. I kind of shared it for me. The thing that I'm good at, I have a tendency to start building my life around. And when you're good at something, you get really used to trying to find worth in it, find stability in it, find love in it, find purpose in it. And so for you, maybe it was something simple, but for you, maybe it's like, man, that was, okay, you're already pushing on something. Like I didn't realize that there's something I've built my life around. And you know what the cool thing is? Jesus spent a lot of time with people who had built their lives around things. And he was really great at leading them to something better. So we're going to be in Luke 5. I'm going to just share about a man that Jesus encounters. His name is Peter. And this is a man who's ordered his life around something. So if you have a Bible, you can open it to Luke 5 if you want. If you're kind of one of those people, it's like I want to follow along. For me, I like to have mine up here, so I'm going to read right out of here. And we're going to go right to Luke 5, so you can hit that slide. Here's what you need to know before we even get in here. At this point, Jesus is just beginning his public ministry, which if you're like, hey, I don't know what that is, that just means that Jesus had lived about 30 years on earth, and now he's beginning to say, hey, I'm going to start telling people, because I'm going to start showing people that actually I am the Son of God. That for 30, it's kind of crazy to think he lived for 30 years and no one knew. And imagine even Mary being like, oh, God, I thought it's been 30 years since you said I thought I was bearing the Son of God. But this is when he's going to first start telling people right here. And he's actually about to have an interaction with a person who became his best friend and probably the disciple, or the one that was really learning from him, the one that he loved tremendously, that they just knew each other well relationally. So here we go, starting in Luke 5, verse 1. One day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, that's just the Sea of Galilee, if you ever wonder what that is. If you see it both back and forth, that's what it is. The people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. Okay, so this is what's happening here. There's that seems really simple, but I just want to give you guys a picture of what's going on. Jesus is by this lake. There's about, I would say there's hundreds of people at this point. Jesus has been saying some things, he's been doing some things that are kind of shaking up everyone's reality of life at this point, and especially their view of religion or tradition. And so people wanted to see. I don't know if you've ever been anywhere where there's like if you go to Baltimore, downtown in the Inner Harbor, and there's that one spot where someone's like always doing really strange magic tricks. You're like, I don't know what's going on. Like somebody's just singing alone there. There's a spot for performers. I think this is a little bit of what Jesus was like. Well, as you're passing by, you're like, at least see this is worth my time. And then they would take a peek at him. And I think we can get that view of, even if Baltimore, if you've ever been there. But this is what people were doing. They're crowding around him and they were listening to what he was saying. All right, next slide. Then it says, he saw at the water's edge 2 boats, left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. So here's what's happened. If you want even more of a picture, this is a big, they call it a sea, or it can be a lake. It's just a huge body of water. He's teaching people, and it's really funny. Jesus kind of he knows about acoustics a little bit. I don't know if you've ever been on a lake and you can hear someone a mile away talking. Jesus was actually teaching people in a boat, and so they pushed it farther out just so that more people could hear him. I thought it was pretty cool that he's like, I know my acoustics in here. But they push it farther out so that people can hear, and they could hear the kind of what he was saying reverberating off the water. And they were listening. He sat down in this boat and he was teaching people. And this is what happens next. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon. So he had pushed out with Simon. He was sitting in his boat, one guy in his boat, speaking to a bunch of people. And immediately when he's finished speaking, he turns to the one guy that would become his best friend, the one that he was here for. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets. So here's something really interesting that's going on here. Jesus is now, he's kind of like this. He's on the edge of the boat. He's teaching. He's sitting and he's talking to 100 people. And then in an instant, it turns to one guy, which I think is so cool that Jesus is so personal, that he's in the boat with someone. He doesn't just say, hey, let me use your boat so I can preach, so I can tell people what's going on. He actually turns to him and he says, actually, I have something for you too. And he tells him, put out into deep water. So the boat's only a little bit out. They were probably in shallow water at this point. And he says, hey, push that boat out a little bit farther to where it gets real deep. And let down the nets for a catch. Simon answered, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets. Here's the thing. We actually start to learn a little bit about Simon. He would later be named Peter. So if I say Peter, you can just, those are interchangeable in this. And we learn a little bit about him. We learn that Simon had been working, that he worked all night. Did any of you guys do a night shift job? Anybody? Yeah, you know what it feels like to work all night. It's not fun sometimes, and especially we learn this about Peter. He worked hard all night. No, sorry, you can go back. My bad. And he hadn't caught anything. So imagine you're working your job, you go in for your job, and you fail at it tremendously. You don't even catch one thing. And this wasn't like fishing rods where you cast it in, you get some nibbles. This was all or nothing. You threw the nets in and you caught stuff, or you threw the nets in and caught nothing. So this is no hope, Peter. He worked hard all night and he haven't caught anything. And here's some other stuff that we actually learn about this, some stuff you should know about this that's going to make this even more important, is that we learn that you would fish at night. So Peter says we've worked all night, and because that was the time to fish. Back then, fishermen would know that if you would go out at night because the water was cooler. And so fish would go and they'd feed at night too. If you're a fisherman now and you fish anywhere, that's why people go really early or really late in the day. Like there's times when fish eat, you know that. But they worked hard all night. They hadn't caught anything. Here's the other thing you need to know about this that's really interesting. He says, Simon, put out into deep water. One thing you should know about fishermen too is they didn't fish in deep water. You just don't. You go at night, they would fish. There'd be pockets of fish in certain spots, and so they'd throw the nets out, and they'd catch them in a specific spot in shallow water. So Jesus is already kind of dissecting a little bit of what Simon is all about, what Peter's all about, the thing that he does best, his fishing. He's starting to dissect this a little bit. And you know what's even weirder? Jesus isn't even a fisherman. And so he's telling Peter here, he's saying, hey, listen, why don't you go farther out where you're not supposed to fish? And why don't you throw the nets out at a time when you're not supposed to, in the morning when the sun's coming up? And by the way, I don't have any trade secrets because I don't have this job either. Like it's the perfect storm of Peter being able to come back to him and say, Who are you? How are you asking me to do this? This is so wrong. This isn't how you fish. I know what's right. This is my thing. I know what to do. And remember how at the beginning we just talked about what's your thing? Fishing was Peter's. If you think about it, Peter had really ordered his life completely around fishing. His schedule, he worked at nights. His livelihood. This is where he would have made money. Probably food too. This is where he would have been provided for, at least the money to get the food he wanted, or he's probably just had fish. His friends, there's other boats. We'll learn that there's other people there too, other fishermen. His nets, this is where he spent his money on. The thing he's ordered his life around was the equipment for fishing. This is it. Fishing is his thing. And it's actually really tangible to see the things that he is trying to get out of fishing. The security, the friendship, the love, the things that what comes with ordering your life around something like that. For many of us, that might be our jobs, that we're really good at ordering our lives around our jobs. And so it's become about that. But this is where things get to be shaken up a little bit. Let's go to Luke 5, 6, and 7. Here we go. It says, when they had done so when they'd pushed out deeper and they threw out the nets for a catch, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. And so I don't know what this looked like. I feel like these nets were big. They were not like, hey, let's just throw out a little 1-pound net. These were sometimes hundreds of pounds. These were huge nets. They had finished cleaning them, and so they push out, and Peter's like, okay, fine. Because you say so, I'll do it. That's an interesting question. I don't actually even know why he did that. I think it's because Jesus had something for him in it. I think that's why he would even be open to this. But he throws the nets out, and I can just imagine, it's like, okay, Jesus, yeah, I'll throw it out. And throws it. He's like, what? And he starts to pull. It's like, oh, yo, guys. He's calling the other boats in, and he's pulling them, and all the boats are coming in, and it's like, what is going on? He's probably crying and laughing, and I don't know what it is. If you've ever won the lottery, I feel like this is probably what it feels like. He got all the money he'd ever wanted in a net right there. He could sell those fish. He got everything. He had failed the night before, and now he was succeeding now. And so he signaled his partners to come and help them. And this is even crazier. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. These boats were made for fish. You know how many fish it is when your boat that's made for fish starts sinking because of fish in it? It's a lot of fish. It's wild. This is the catch of a lifetime. This is the promotion of a lifetime. This is the thing. The thing he'd ordered his life around, he's now succeeding in it. So it would seem. All right, let's go on to the next one. But this is where things change. It says this: when Simon Peter saw this, meaning the big catch, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. So were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and Simon's partners. So Peter, in light of this huge catch, you know what's interesting he doesn't do? He doesn't turn to Jesus and say, "Wow, look at all these fish." And the real question about this that we need to ask, that I think is how we get to the heart of what this is really about, is this: why does Peter suddenly start talking about sin after he pulled in the catch of fish? Why would he pull in the catch of a lifetime and then look at Jesus and go and fall down on his knees and say, "I am a sinful man. Go away from me, Lord"? And I think this, if we can really look at this part, why in the world he got here, we'll actually get to the heart of what Jesus is doing here. And you know what the best part about this is? This isn't just about Peter anymore. This is about us. There's something much deeper going on here. And on the surface, this story has nothing to do with us, but actually, when we take it deeper, it has everything to do with us. This isn't just Peter and Jesus anymore. And you know what I think is really happening? In this moment, this is what's happening. In this moment, Peter is realizing his complete inability in the face of Jesus' perfection. That I think the reason that he sees the fish and goes straight to sin is because what he's realizing is that he worked hard all night with under the perfect circumstances, in the right spot, with the right equipment, and everything he knew, the trade that he had centered his life around for purpose, love, affection, support, everything he needed, provision, and he failed at it, and then Jesus comes along and he sees what perfection looks like. That he actually is getting a taste of, I am so unable in the face of Jesus. He did everything right, and he caught absolutely nothing. Have you felt like this before? Just for you, that, hey man, if you've ever had a time, or maybe that's now, I think we're prone to this our whole lives, to do this actually. That we center our lives around something and we say, this is going to give me what I think it's going to give me. This is going to give me what I really want. That if my kids just do well in school, then I'll stop being stressed, and that's where my stress comes from. That if I just hit this promotion, then we won't have to worry about bills, and you know what, my worry would go away. That we start to order our lives around things, but have you ever felt that it's just failing? Like, I've just done everything, and it just fails? Peter did too. In this instance, Jesus does all of the work. And Peter, even with his best effort, produces nothing. Jesus does all the work, and Peter, with his best effort, produces nothing. And I think Peter calls himself a sinful man because he's seeing that his best effort in the face of Jesus is actually unable to produce anything good in the face of Jesus. Peter could have looked at his fishing and said, hey man, Jesus, look at all these fish I caught. Aren't you happy with me? Don't you like me? Look, I'm the real deal fisherman. And he fails in front of them, and it's hitting Peter like a ton of bricks. And this is why I think this is so good, is I think this whole interaction, it's not actually about fish. If you read this, and if you've ever read this before, this whole interaction's not actually about fish at all. This whole interaction is about Peter's heart. And in turn, it's about our hearts. It's actually about us too. This has everything to do with you here this morning. And I have good news. It gets really good for us. When we see Jesus for who he truly is, we see how sinful and messed up we really are. In light of how good Jesus is, his perfection, we actually see how messed up we really are. And guys, that sounds painful. You're like, yes, I know that. I'm very aware of that. but it's actually the first step in understanding really, really good news. You might think that's just bad at first, but Jesus doesn't leave us there, and he actually doesn't leave Peter there, which is really cool. Here's what you need to know. Here's why this is so important. Here's why this is about Jesus or Peter's heart more than anything else, and your heart more than anything else. What this communicates to us, and what we know to be true about God, is that we are fully unable, 100% unable to prove or be good enough for him. You can't say enough prayers. You can't cheer enough. You can't put your hands high enough when you worship. You can't do enough good things this week to ever earn any amount of love to God. And you know what's great about Peter that I think is even cooler? He actually did what seemed like all the right things. Isn't that crazy to think about? He actually went out at the right times. He actually went and he put it out into the right water with the right nets and the right people and all this stuff. And I think we can do that too. Man, if I just order my life the right way, if I just do the right things, if I say the right prayers, if I come to church enough, like maybe God will be more likely to do something for me or love me. And you know what? This doesn't end, this is a lifelong struggle, for us. I don't think this just ends quickly. I think we still find ways to earn love, but the best part is, for us, Jesus has done all the work. Peter does nothing on his best day, and Jesus does all the work. And so I just want to encourage you, even in this, we're going to keep going, but I want to encourage you in this truth, that your best efforts are unable to produce good in Jesus' eyes. And guess what? He did all of it for you. That his deep love for you, his perfection, was given to you when you trusted in him. How free do you think that makes us feel today? When the pressure's off you to be good enough or to do the right things or say the right prayers or whatever you have to do, you make a mistake and you think to yourself, I'll just kind of put the pieces back together myself. No, Peter did all the right things and he couldn't produce perfection, but Jesus could. And so for you today, Jesus has produced perfection on your behalf, that he lived a perfect life for you and then he gave it to you, and your best efforts will never do anything to earn anything from God. How beautiful. But this is the best part. This is where it gets better. I think it gets even better. You're like, hey, Kev, I know, I've heard that. That's like the intro to Jesus thing. Like, yeah, we heard that. Tell me what I got to do now. And actually, I think Jesus, in this interaction, he almost anticipates us asking that question, because this is what he does with Peter. It keeps going. It says, then Jesus said to Simon Peter, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. You know what's so beautiful about this picture? Do you remember where Peter was? On his knees, at Jesus' knees, probably head down. I'm a sinful man. And look what Jesus does. I imagine he gets down and he picks Peter back up and he says to him, don't be afraid. You're looking at me and you're afraid of me because of how perfect I am. Like we said, when we see how good Jesus is, we see how sinful we are. And he picks Peter back up and he says, don't be afraid. You have nothing to be afraid of with me. You have nothing to be afraid of. He knows that Peter's feeling the weight of his sin, but Jesus says, you don't need to be afraid of me. And here's the best question. If you're like, hey, if that's me, if that's us, why don't I need to be afraid of Jesus? In light of how bad I am, why don't I need to be afraid of Jesus? That's a good question to ask. If we really are that bad and Jesus is that perfect, why don't we need to be afraid? And this is actually, I want to go here. I want to read a verse for you guys. This is from Ephesians 1, 4-5. This is where we get our answer. Why don't you have to be afraid of Jesus? For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ in accordance with, this is the best one, in accordance with his pleasure and will. So why don't you need to be afraid in light of Jesus? Why don't you need to be afraid, in light of your sin? Because Jesus chose you because it was his pleasure to do so. Isn't that great? The pressure, once again, is off you. If you keep saying, man, why was I chosen? The pressure's off you once again. You want to know why you were chosen? Because it was my pleasure to do so. How freeing is that for Peter? That Jesus looks at him and says, don't be afraid. And this is why you don't need to be afraid, because I did the work and I chose you and I did everything. What do you have to fear? You think I care about your inability to do good in front of me? Good, you can't. It's all about me. Some of you guys need to hear that this morning. That there's something that you feel like, man, I know Jesus it loves me, but I kind of feel afraid of him. Like he's not going to give me what I want unless I do the right things. He's not going to I know he loves me, but he does say, hey, I love you, but no, he doesn't. He says, I love you, and you're mine. And you want to know why you're mine? Because I chose you. You were chosen by Jesus, and it was his great pleasure to do so. It wasn't because he saw your performance or your future performance. Gosh, take a breath. Like this is good news for Peter. Don't be afraid. And then this is the best part. For you were like, okay, fine. But I still got to do all the right things in my Christian walk. Now I have to learn. Jesus has called me in, and now it's my duty to do the best in my Christian life, right? I got to start living the Christian life right. Because if I don't, God, I don't know, maybe he won't give me what I want. Maybe he won't love me the way that he says so. This is for someone who's doing all the right things. That's what this message is for. He brought me in on his own will, but I have to kind of keep myself there. Let's see what he says to Peter. He says to Peter, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. Mark also writes about this account, and I really love the way he says it. He says, and Jesus said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me, and I'm going to make you into this. You want to know one more way that Jesus takes the pressure off us, and he took it off Peter? Peter sees his sin, and Jesus says, don't be afraid, and guess what? You don't have to be afraid anymore, because I'm going to be the one working in you still. Do you see that? I love this about Peter, about Jesus. He doesn't say, hey, listen, now it's your job to get the Christian life right and be really good. He says, no, I'm going to make you into the one that you were meant to be. Just trust in me. I'm going to make you into the fisher of men. You know what that also means for us too? No one is more or less qualified in this life as a believer. Isn't that cool? Greg being up here, being really great relationally. You know why he's not more qualified than you? Because Jesus made him into that. Really. If you're looking around, you're like, I just don't do the things that this person does. I'm not good enough. Nope, Jesus is the one making you into that. That he's the one working in your heart. He doesn't leave us still. The pressure is off you to be lovable or acceptable enough for God, and the pressure is off you to work to become who you're supposed to be in Christ. So as far as I can see, the pressure is off you all the way around to be brought in and to grow. It's on him. Just keep looking to him. And I love the way that he goes next, where he says, so they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. Guys, I feel like I want to just speak to two different groups of people in the room right now, just about this. The first group is if you're here and you're like, hey, I'm not really in on this Jesus stuff. This isn't for me. I got family that's kind of into this, but I don't really believe in this, and certainly don't trust in it or trust in Jesus. Here's what you need to know, and here's what I hope you would know about this, that we can see from the way that Jesus interacted with Peter. It's this. This is the whole heart and soul of what it means to be a Christian or to believe in Jesus. You are fully unable to do anything good enough for God's love. You will fail every time. The thing that you order your life around, that you think will bring you any type of provision, glory, love, whatever it is, will ultimately fail you in the sight of Jesus, in the sight of perfection. But Jesus has chosen you. He lived a perfect life on your behalf, and he died. And when he died on a cross, if you've ever wondered what actually happened there, he took the perfect life that he lived, and then he took your sin, and then he swapped them, and he gave that perfect life to you. When we trust in him, we get that perfect life. He did all the work. You did nothing. Jesus did all the work. So if you're wondering, hey, what do Christians believe? Like, what is this all about? I'm kind of peeking over the fence into this thing. That's it. We trust that Jesus did everything for us when we couldn't. How beautiful is that? Gosh, it's like they're so freed up. And if you're like, yeah, but I'd see the way Christians treat each other. It's like, yeah, me too. That's me. And you want to know why? Because we're messed up. We're unable to do good. But he did it for us. So we don't put our hope in how good we live. So if you're kind of looking in, you're like, this Christian thing, I don't know about this. Guess what? This is our only hope, that Jesus did it for us. That's what we're really about, and that's it. Nothing added on. We're just hoping and trusting that he was perfect on our behalf and loves us and chose us. And now, I kind of just want to give this to another group in the room. The other group is for you guys that are in here that have put your trust in Jesus. I think sometimes when we can get into a message like this, you can be like, yeah, that's kind of that's kind of what I first heard when I came to know Jesus, but that doesn't really matter to me now. Or maybe it does, but it more takes a back burner to living the Christian life right, getting your quiet times in, doing the right prayers, having the right friends. To you, I want to encourage you. If you're coming into this room today feeling weary, like sin just beat you again, this is true. This is still true, that your effort never did anything for God in the first place. That when you go into this life and you start comparing your ability to follow Christ to what you think it should be, you're actually missing the point completely. You should never compare your life with Christ and say, man, that's how God's going to love me, is if I just start to be more like him. You want to know why? Because it was all on him. Peter did his best effort. What's your best effort? A good day where you were nice to your family, where you got kids out the door, when you had your quiet time, when you did your prayer, whatever it is for you. What does your best effort as a Christian look like? What does it look like? I mean, like, we all have that mentality of what the best effort should be. Here's what you need to know. It does nothing to earn you love from Christ. He earned it for you. His life is your perfection now when we trust in him. The pressure's off you to perform. And you want to know what? Going forward too, I will make you into who you're supposed to be. The pressure is off you to walk better now. So for you guys that are weary out there, that are feeling like, man, I just got beat up once again by my sin, man, good. I think it just pushes us right back to the one who beat it for us. Here's what you need to know. This is the coolest part, and this is where we see it. Peter didn't go back to fishing. Did you notice that? Like, that's actually a cool thought that at the end he says, so they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. How cool is that? Peter, what he could have done, and what I think we can do in a sense sometimes, is we can say, you know what, Jesus did it all for me. Like, hallelujah, praise the Lord. I'm so loved by him. Look at that catch of fish he did. Now what I'm going to try and do is catch fish like that. I'm just going to go back and try and work harder and do the things that Jesus did. Peter didn't go back to try and catch fish, even though he saw what perfection was like. What he did is he went with Jesus. He trusted in him. So for you today, don't go back to trying to catch fish. Don't go back to trying to be good enough for God. And don't leave here today feeling like, man, I got to get my life together and then he'll love me. He chose you because it was his pleasure to do so. He did all the work. And your perfection actually rests in his work and not your own. That's for everyone who doesn't trust in him, for those that do, and for those of you that are 50 years in and you're like, man, I know how sinful I really am. It's still for you. This is our hope. The battle of the Christian life is actually believing. Did you know that? The battle of the Christian life isn't faithfulness from us. It's faith in him. But sometimes I think we can think it's us being faithful now to what God has called us to. And that's where we get our worth. It's not. It's in his faithfulness on your behalf, his perfection on your behalf, and his love. So take a breather today and rest and know that he's got you. Hey, thanks. Amen is right. Hey, this is what I would say for all of you to really finish this and let you guys know. Here's the application. Some of you are like, I need my application today. Like, what am I going to do? Here's your application. Trust and live in freedom. This is what you were made for, and he chose you. When sin beats you down again, remember that it's not your life that he judges. It was Jesus's, and it was perfect. You're deeply loved. When you're tired, when you're beat down, when you do the same thing, the same sin, the same thing that you're like, man, this should have been gone 40 years ago, and I can't get over it. You're still loved, and nothing's changed. What a truth. When your kids are nuts, and you're like, man, I'm the worst parent. I'm not like all those other moms. Nope, it's not on your work. It's on Jesus's. Don't find your worth in that. When you get fired from your job, or when your kid walks away from Christ, or they're not following him, it's not on you. It's on him. And rest. Take a breather when you step outside today and go home and enjoy Christ. I'm going to pray for us, and then I think Greg's going to come back up and share something. So let me pray for you guys, really. God, thank you so much for this truth. I'm so thankful for your interaction with Peter and that it matters to us today. God, thank you that you love us tremendously because of your work. God, would you help us to believe in you today, to trust in you when everything else says to trust in our own ability to please you? Would you help us to kick away that lie and have freedom in your love, the fact that we were chosen by you? And God, for anyone in this room who's thinking, man, I don't know if I believe this because of all the stuff that comes along with being a Christian, would you just encourage them and draw them near and remind them that it's not about what they do, it's what you've done. Bring everyone to freedom and joy today. We love you. We're so thankful for that truth. Amen.